How you doing there, Fletcher?
Great. Good to be here.
Welcome to the first, and maybe last, no, just kidding, first video podcast of Real Estate Madness.
Yeah.
What do you think of that name? Real Estate
Madness. It is a mad game at times, isn't it?
Yeah, we took, I went from Home Sweet Home with Russ McClellan and friends on the radio, which you've been a guest many times, and did that for 5 years. That was kind of the goal when I launched Keller Williams 5 years ago. And here we sit 5 years later. I remember you and I were having a conversation in the parking lot, parking right over there by Omi Gardens area. And I said, I think I'm going to try to get this real estate franchise thing going and do this radio show. And I remember you looking at me like, he's a dreamer.
You know what I love about entrepreneurs, though? They have this uncanny ability to take ideas and manifest them into the physical space, which is so cool.
Yeah, and it doesn't always happen on the timeline that maybe others think you should do it.
Yep.
I know for me, and you probably could agree with this. I think you've known me long enough. We've known each other like 20 plus years, 25 years. Like this room, this psychedelic room that I've created. I've said I was going to do this for over a year. And it's just kind of like a pit bull on a pork chop. When I get an idea, I just kind of gnaw on it. And then eventually it happens, but often not in the timeline that my optimistic self or my enthusiastic self wants.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's Tony Robbins who says, you can have everything you want. You just can't have it all right now. Right. But, and I know you like to say this as well, but we frequently overestimate what we can do in 1 year or a month, but underestimate what we can do in a year, 2 years, 3 years. And you've been kind of a testament to that, right? I mean, you have so many ideas, so many visions, and I know a lot of people probably like shake their head and walk away. But the thing is, I've known you long enough where I see they all come to pass, right? They all come to pass, and maybe not exactly as you wanted them, and maybe even better than you wanted them, right? But yeah.
For sure. And, for people that don't know me, Fletcher, basically maybe introduce yourself and what you've done. I know you've helped a tremendous amount of people in your life in some incredible ways, including a lot of people that work here at Keller Williams. So I know it's every time I say this, it's probably less and less people know. I know Fletcher. But for those who don't, what do you do?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I help people change the way they think in order to produce outstanding outcomes in their health, wealth, and relationships. And when I say I help them change the way they think, what I mean actually is that through this, the curriculum that I put together, we actually lay down new neural pathways in the brain that were not there before. And as a result of those new neural pathways, they can begin to think and transform their mindset to a place where they didn't previously have access to go. And it's a pretty fun game. And I like to, I say I help people change the way they think. What I really mean is transform. I use the word change because it's a word that we all are familiar with. But if you can change one way, you can change back. Now, transformation is a bit different because, the butterfly cannot transform back or change back into the caterpillar. Right. It's done.
It's evolved.
Yep, it's evolved. And so really what we're talking about is the game of transformation. I use that word change just because we're all familiar with it. But what I really mean is to transform, to evolve to that better version of yourself. And you're not going to go back to the previous version. There might be flavors of it, but you will literally be different.
Well, you're a testament to change, right? I mean, you haven't always done this for a living.
Correct.
What was it like before this journey that you've been on with coaching? What was your life like, and what would be a real life example of recognition of maybe I'm not in the right place or going down the right road? Mm-hmm. And then how did you find the courage to change?
Yeah. So about 6 years ago, I left my previous long-time career, where is in a tech industry, as you know, and sales, And I traveled all over the country many, many times and did a lot of speaking engagements. And it was there that I found myself consistently in this role of coaching. That's not what my title was, but because I understood the mind of the salesperson, and I was a salesperson, and I was huge into personal development, I just kind of naturally started finding myself in that coaching role. And so a lot of my clients would call me up, not about tech stuff, not about sales stuff, but about advice. And that's filled me up. I love to do that because I've always been into personal development since elementary school. I was a really odd kid. I was reading Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking in fourth grade. So I've always been on this journey.
No wonder there's a difference between us, because I think I was reading like Curious George or something goofy. Or getting scared by the troll under the bridge and Billy Goat Gruff or something. That was my
right.
Different path, but no.
The similarity, though, is we're both super curious about people and things, and right.
Yeah, and what I like to do is, and I'm very open, as you know, and I'm very open about talking about my vulnerabilities, my mistakes, and my failures in life and business. And I think that when you started talking about this journey, you had to do some pretty radical testing of your own self.
I did.
Could you explain why you got yourself in that position of being radically different? And it wasn't probably very comfortable.
No, it was highly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still like to do things like that. The reason is because we're just a sum of our programming. We all have programs that run, and those programs run without our permission, consent, or approval.
What do you mean by programs?
Sure. So thinking. So we have, or mindset we'll use mindset. So we use the term mindset a lot. And I think people think they know what it means. I don't know if they do or not, but what I mean when I use the word mindset is a fixed set of beliefs, decisions, and attitudes that help me make sense of my life and the world around me. Now, we don't just have one mindset. We've got a mindset around money. We got around money, a mindset around relationships, career, sex, everything. We've got a mindset around very specific things. That mindset was set up, again, without our permission. We saw it was modeled for us. We were told about it. And then we kind of just adapted it when we were very young. And they turn into to beliefs. And a belief is simply a sense of certainty. And it's a belief is a thought you keep on thinking over and over and over again until it feels really certain. Now you've literally, connected up your brain around this concept, and that becomes like a program. You got your phone there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the first phone you've ever owned?
No.
And does that phone update itself once in a while?
Tells me to hit a button.
You got it, right? So we're constantly updating all these devices, our computers, our security systems, we're updating our currencies. We're updating everything. The one thing we don't ever take time to upgrade is right up here. The programming up here, which is just software. It's the equivalent of software. So we've been programmed. We have these programs that run, and some programs serve us and some don't. And so what I do is I help people make that assessment. Does that program, let's identify what the programs are. Do they serve me? And if they don't serve us, then let's set up new programming that will help us get to that next level.
So you've never had an ambition problem that I've ever known. What was it about, to get personal, what was it about your life when one day, was it something that just, you said you've been reading books about positivity and motivation and coaching for a long time, but you found yourself in a position where you weren't too happy with yourself?
Correct. Yeah.
We've shared. Are you willing to share about what that was like, what that feeling was like?
Yeah.
And how did that lead you to make a decision?
Yeah. And so more than 2 decades ago, I got to a place where I was not, I was confused and disillusioned with my life because I was a hard worker. I've always been an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a hard worker, prided myself on that. I'd work all day, all night,
right,
7 days a week. always thinking of the new thing. But what happened was that I wasn't getting ahead financially, and nor emotionally, and things were starting to fall apart in my family and my marriage. And and then I lost my business that I had poured my heart and soul into. We were devastated financially. We had massive debt, family of 5, a mortgage, and no income. And at that point, I just remember feeling like, I don't know what to do.
A little lost.
I was extremely lost. And so what I did was I turned to the one thing that had been the constant in my life, which was personal development. And I dug in deep, 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 deep. And I had to get out of my comfort zone. So I started having conversations with people, taking on things that I didn't know if I had the ability to do, but I was trusting. And so that led me to this new business that was in the tech industry that I, was partnered up with Chris Rains and my friend Dave Ryder. And we took this idea and just blew it up massively. And that put me on the journey of being able to see what was actually possible when I got out of my comfort zone, like in a big way. Like, right. I mean, we know that's where all the magic happens, when you get out of your comfort zone. So that's what I was committed to doing. And I've kept doing that, putting myself in uncomfortable positions so that I can grow.
Well, I think it's very valuable to know and to remember that when we look at other people from the outside in, and sometimes in today's world, it's always perfect because I look at their Facebook or Instagram and it's perfect. But the reality is, very few people like fell to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
Right. Like one day they woke up and they have a very successful international coaching career and growing rapidly. No, like I can almost guarantee you that anybody that is providing content or is successful personally or in business or emotionally has been beat up.
Absolutely.
I mean, one way or another, whether it was that programming from, you had a childhood that wasn't so nice, parents that weren't so giving, or abuse, or there's some checkered past in everybody's background.
Everybody.
Right. And I think it's important now. I mean, let me rephrase that. Do you think it's important for people to remember that are going through that right now?
Yeah, I do, because ultimately those situations allow us to grow. I mean, people frequently tell me what they want out of life. They want to feel more peaceful or more calm in their life. To which I tell them, good, then welcome upset and tumultuous times. Because you're not going to be able to learn how to be peaceful unless you've gone through those challenges. Those are the teachers.
Is there a common theme when you're doing your curriculum in people? I mean, I would imagine we're all vastly different, but I would imagine there's some commonality in people. When you hear someone say certain things, do you just go, wow, like there's an opportunity for me to really help you?
Yeah, I think we all are in that boat, myself included. Like there's always that next level. There's always that blind spot that we have. And as you know, I talk a lot about suffering versus feeling good, right? And people are operating largely from suffering. So yeah, the opportunities are plentiful. And it's all starts with getting curious.
So what if you had to say 5 years ago, what you thought was the most important thing about your coaching curriculum versus fast forward through the pandemic, through now potential recession, some uncertainty that comes from being locked down for 2 years, some habits that were created, being paid to stay at home. I mean, now fast forward to today, what would you say is the major differences, if there are any, between 5 years ago in your world and today?
I think the level of uncertainty. I think the pandemic just cast so much uncertainty into our lives. We didn't know from day to day, is the lockdown over? Can we go back to what we think is normal? There was so much uncertainty, and people don't do well with uncertainty. On the other side of the coin, there are a group of people who actually navigate uncertainty well, and that ability allows them to navigate life much more powerfully. And so again, the lesson there for us in the pandemic was, how do we deal with uncertainty at a more in a way that will serve our lives? And for me, that answer always comes down to trusting. We really had to lean into trusting that life is always working out for our greatest evolution, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it doesn't taste like it, sound like it. Life's always working out for our greatest evolution. Now, it's important to realize I didn't say it's always working out the way I want it to work out. Because if that was the case, we would all be pretty lazy.
Yeah.
Life would be pretty easy.
Yeah, the Matrix.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Just plug in.
So it's not that a lot of people wish for an easy life. I think we should instead strive to develop the tool set that allows us to navigate life and continue the evolution of becoming.
Yeah, it's a challenge. As you know, my story is one of ups and downs in the financial world, and my emotions, my relationships,
peaks and valleys.
But the one thing I've always tried to maintain, and I was very lucky growing up with some great parents in a great town, is that if you can live with the best case scenario, which most people can, everything works out perfectly on this adventure or this job or this relationship, I'm pretty sure I can handle the best case. What I try to do is ask myself, can I handle the worst case?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, then I better think a couple more times before I go jumping in.
Yeah.
But what I've learned in my 30 plus years or 53 years on planet Earth so far is that my worst case scenario is so much better than the vast majority of people on planet Earth. I mean, that's one of the things that works for me. And I'm leading to a question, which I'm always confused by, especially in my marriage. Sorry, Audie. No, I call it Christmas Day syndrome. And I say, if I'm having a bad day, what goes through my head? Well, I'm not in a cave in Afghanistan, 30 degrees and getting shelled by mortars.
Yeah.
Taliban's not after me and my family. Or I'm not in Ukraine in the middle of winter getting blown up by whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to quit whining about this.
Mm-hmm.
This works for me. So when I compare myself to other people, if I'm starting to feel sorry for myself, that works. So my Christmas Day syndrome is this: 365 days until next Christmas, right? 364. I would rather hope for the best, that I'm going to get all the presents. Try to imagine a little kid. I'm going to get all the presents I want, and I'm going to dream and be excited for the anticipation of that success or that Christmas day. And then, I didn't get what I wanted. Okay, so I'm disappointed for one day, and then I reset, and I'm excited for 364 more days. Now, that's the programming. Now, maybe because I had a cush gig growing up with great parents and love and support and trust, well, my wife is like, I'd rather not get excited for these things because I don't want to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's frustrating to her when I say, hey, we're not in a cave in Afghanistan. Or my daughter. Like, that doesn't always give me the result or that I was hoping for. So maybe could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, sure. So a couple things. Number one, we're practiced at noticing the misses, right? I mean, we're so practiced at it, which is why, as you know, in my curriculum, we talk a lot about what are the wins, what's working out for you, right? That's what we want to begin to practice, noticing the wins, the hits. The other thing too is, it's funny, like you said, that doesn't always land with people. So yes, because they're not in a place where they're practiced at contrast. So it might be helpful to instead get curious, like tell me about what's going on. For like, being curious is such a helpful way to be. You remember that? I don't know if you remember that show, Columbo. It was a long time ago.
I remember it.
Yeah, we're dating ourselves for sure.
Yeah.
But one of the great things about Columbo was
Google it.
He would, Google it. One of his famous lines is, he'd stand there, clearly the guilty party's in front of him, or somebody's holding something back, and he'd stand there and kind of scratch his head. And he's like, now help me understand this. he always came from it from this place of curiosity, right? Like, help me understand. And then he would lay out this nice dialogue that.
Yeah, it makes sense, because I would imagine if when I say something like, hey, calm down, we're not, well, that's judgment.
Right.
I'm coming from a judgmental place, and that usually gets hackles.
Yes.
And the force fields go up. And so, another thing I've learned, and, I was divorced for 20 years before I got remarried this last April. And one of the things that I've learned that works way better that I didn't learn until recently is when I get something happens and I'm offended or I'm hurt, more hurt than offended. Instead of just reacting, like, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my intensity level in sports, my intensity level in business, that doesn't work as well with my wife.
Yes.
But if I say, honestly, you hurt my feelings. Whoa, that's a different reaction. Now it's like, what do you mean I hurt your feelings? I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. So now we have a conversation. Conversely with her, she's been very open with me, and she says, I really appreciate it when you acknowledge and use those words.
Mm-hmm.
I want to acknowledge you. And I think that came from your coaching. Like, I want to acknowledge you for doing the dishes for us, or I want to acknowledge you for all the hard work you're doing at your job. And I know it's stressful and it's helping us out. I just want to give you those acknowledgments.
Mm-hmm.
That goes a long ways, rather than the assumption that
Yes.
you should know that I know.
Yeah. Acknowledgement is such a powerful thing. And especially in our culture, we have such a weird relationship to it.
Mm-hmm.
We all crave acknowledgement. We want to be acknowledged. It feels good. It's not arrogance. It's just we're hardwired. We want to feel good, and we like to feel significant. Not arrogant. Just we want to feel significant, like we matter. And so frequently we'll wait for acknowledgement, and we'll wait and wait and wait because we're not very forthcoming or practiced in acknowledging people. So we wait and wait and wait. It doesn't come, so we get resentful. Or this is the other thing that we do. People will say, Russ, good job on that, blah, blah, blah. And then Russ will say, don't mention it. It was no big deal. So we get the acknowledgement that we've been craving, and then we just kind of brush it aside. Or we might be acknowledged by somebody publicly, and then we leave and kind of mumble to ourselves, God, they didn't even mention the good part. Right? So this thing about acknowledgement,
Mm-hmm.
we can get really clear about it. We want it. And so instead of waiting for it, let's practice, number one, requesting it. And number two, practice giving it. So instead of hoping you notice something I do, I can simply say, like, this is what my wife and I do. Hey, babe, is there anything you want to be acknowledged for lately? And she'll be like, yeah, actually, there was this cool thing that happened at work. Or I did this neat thing around the house that I'm really proud of. And so then she'll tell me literally what she wants to be acknowledged for. So I'm not guessing, and I'm using her exact words. I'll say like, oh wow, that's really neat. Hey babe, I want to acknowledge you for, and basically I just kind of pair it back to her. Now, this is not insincere. It is actually very sincere, and I'm speaking the words that she wants to hear. And she understands that I heard her because I'm able to say it back to her. It's a really cool way of acknowledging people. Now, we want to get in the practice of acknowledging people because it does two things. Number one, when we appreciate someone, it's an opportunity to raise their sense of worth, and we raise their sense of worth too. In our own minds. A home appreciates in value, right? The only reason a home appreciates is not because it's gotten tons of work done on it. It appreciates simply because we say it appreciates. A home depreciates. What? Nothing bad happened to it. I know, but we've all agreed that it's now not worth as much. Language is an incredibly powerful, like a magic wand. You appreciate somebody, you just raised their value in your mind and hopefully in their mind too.
Yeah, I think the assumptions, we operate so often on assumptions that become habits that Well, look at our divorce rate. Like, look at how many relationships don't work. And
Mhm.
I bet if you polled 1,000 people, I'm no expert on it, other I have been divorced, but I can tell you that communication is a pretty damn important part of it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you make these assumptions until you're so far apart, the resentment's so thick, or something goes haywire, and then it's just too far gone.
Yeah.
But it's weird because you said something interesting. The relationship that we have around acknowledgement, the relationship we have around communication, it's almost like there's a weakness in the vernacular if we use it.
Yeah.
Is that something that makes sense to you?
Yeah. I mean, we there's in my curriculum I talk about two different models of communication. And one of the ways we use communication is to survive and fix life. We're trying to avoid the blows that actually never even happen. We're always trying to survive and fix using language, and it usually sounds like there's a lot of accusation or a lot of defending or coercing or convincing, right? Or explaining, and that's all in this one realm of communication. But notice, none of that is talking about creating. None of it's talking about building up. It's always trying to survive, defend, tear down. And there's this other way of communicating, like acknowledging, appreciating, creating, getting, making requests. Those types of communication actually live in the realm of creating life.
Yeah. So why do you think it's so hard? Because, you said the programming, but if somebody is not humble, or, and they don't know they're not humble, and I'll put myself in that category. I remember a time in my 20s and 30s, maybe now, I don't know, but definitely in my 20s and 30s where I was just confident. That was my self-talk was, I'm just a confident guy, man. That's how it is. I'm going to go right through you. It's just how it works. Whether it's football game or basketball game or baseball game or rodeo or whatever, jump motorcycles or in business, I'm going to go straight through you.
Mm-hmm.
And that intensity was misguided, and it didn't serve me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just thought I was confident, but it comes across completely different to a lot of people, like arrogance or rude, or somehow you're more important than they are.
Yeah. Confidence is a wonderful thing. Arrogance has a flavor of there's a being better than the next person. Confidence has nothing to do with about I'm better than that person.
Right.
Confidence is all based in like proficiency, right? Experience. And most of that experience has been like a lot of hard knocks.
Yeah.
And, but arrogance, there's this flavor of like, I'm better than.
Yeah. And I think it's often the case where people are in that trap. One of the things that helped me get out of it is really understanding that abundance is everywhere. And that scarcity mindset was fueling like, hey, you know what? I'm going to open a real estate company, and guess what? I'm going to put you out of business. And I'm going to kick some butt. That's not very nice. It's not really serving me or anyone. Right.
Yeah.
But it took out of my 20s, took a long time and getting beat up.
Yes.
And figuring out what pain was, legitimate emotional pain in a divorce, legitimate financial pain in a bankruptcy.
Yes.
Legitimate setbacks. Like, I didn't see that punch coming.
Yes.
And often I say I had such a good childhood growing up in Manson or Mayberry, like back in the day, right? It was a beautiful place, man. The 70s and 80s in Manson was perfect. And then one day, life.
Yeah.
All of a sudden those wolves are there. All of a sudden things aren't working out always. The more risks you take, eventually I learned what the word risk means.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not ashamed to say that because it was a beautiful place. But I actually had to go figure out what a lot of people figured out way earlier. And that is that life doesn't always work out the way you plan it, but it's always working out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, right? It's that mindset around it's always working out.
Yes.
It's just not always predictably working out exactly how
Yes.
I thought. Sometimes better, sometimes not as good, but it's always working out.
Yeah. All those hard knocks that you mentioned, divorce and financial bankruptcy. I mean, all of that was, someone listening to this might think, well, you guys are talking about life working out. How's that life working out? Oh, we said it's working out for our greatest evolution. It allowed you to evolve, to become stronger and wiser, and create at that next level, which you always are doing. I mean, that's one of the things I really respect about you is you're always creating, and you're able to create at that next level because of what you've gone through, because life has always been working out for your greatest evolution. It's such a great overarching story to have in your life. Oh, life's always working out for my greatest evolution. Ooh, it doesn't feel good right now, but I know life's working out for me. So there must be something here for me to pay attention to learn, to become stronger and wiser. And, and we talk a lot about wisdom. Wisdom is simply the ability to apply a body of knowledge and to know which body of knowledge to apply and when to apply it. That's what wisdom is. The only way you can be wise is if you've gone through some turbulent times, been knocked down.
Yeah, what's Mike Tyson's favorite quote? Everybody always has everything figured out right up until the time they get punched in the nose. And then all that goes out the window. Like, I love that quote.
That's a good one.
If Mike Tyson punches you, it's not working out.
Right.
But even now, and I think that's so true. Our mission statement at my firm here, Keller Williams, is that we are on a mission to change lives to the life that people want and the life they deserve, simply using real estate as the vehicle to do it.
Yeah, I love that.
And that has not a lot to do with X's and O's or systems and models. I think that one of the major differences in my brain now and 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago is that mindset, which again, it's such a weird word because it means so many different things to so many different people that it comes across like a simple gotcha phrase or something.
Yes.
And really, I believe mindset is everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the greatest system or the greatest model or the greatest leads or the greatest tools. And if your mindset's not in alignment, nothing happens.
Right.
But you can have very, very average systems, very, very average tools, very average work ethic, but with a great mindset. And things can start to work out. It's like that 1% mindset equals 99% of your success, not the 80-20 rule.
Right.
I don't know if I buy into that anymore. I really buy into this concept. But when you're in business trainings,
mm-hmm.
it seems like most of the time, your systems you need more systems. You need more models. You need more tools. You need more technology. I actually thought about, I told you this once, and I still might. I might hire somebody like you that's a psychologist to just pretend they're a real estate agent so they can help all of us just during the day. Well, there's kind of like a secret agent because it's that important. And yet when you start talking to people about their attitude or their programming or their mindset, the challenge is that the ones that buck that idea or dismiss that idea are usually the ones that I wish had it the most.
Yeah. Yeah. They probably have some significant blind spots. Now we all have blind spots, but yeah, if you can't even get curious about, if you can't begin to entertain this conversation of self-inquiry, then you're going to really be hindering yourself.
Yeah, I was told not that long ago, I have leadership issues at this firm, I have systems issues at this firm, models issues at this firm, and I said, they're right.
Yeah. Yeah,
they are 100% right.
Like, hello, we're not trying to deny any of this.
No.
Yeah, do I have issues? Got lots of issues.
Yes.
Have I been wrong?
How much time we got?
Many times. I'll be wrong again. The difference is none of that is going to stop me from continuing on my mission, on my journey, on becoming more. Because I don't care who you are. Gary Keller. Think you still got issues? Absolutely. Is he always putting out fires? Absolutely. Is he still working on himself? Absolutely. Has he arrived? Some may think so. If you ask him, maybe financially, but I'm sure he's still picking up books and reading them. Why? Because there's always more to learn. There's always more to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he is. He's one of those guys that is learning based and, infinitely.
Yes.
Infinitely learning based. And which, if you think about it, somebody told me once, there's two ways to be. You can be learning based or ignorant based. Which one do you want to be?
Really?
I was like, that's pretty hardcore, but it's like, wait a minute, you know everything? The only thing I know for sure is that 33 years later in real estate, I don't know very much. And I'm not being coy. I'm being very legitimately true.
Yeah.
Like, I am such a student that when those doors open and you realize that, man.
Yep.
And what I knew yesterday doesn't apply tomorrow. So directly, indirectly. So tell me about this. What is this concept of resistance, and how do we help people that are struggling? Let's take some real life facts.
Yeah.
Interest rates have doubled. There's a war in Ukraine. Talk about uncertainty. You know, if you read the wrong newspaper article, you better go find a concrete bunker today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, start prepping tomorrow and get that 4-wheel drive ready because you're going to, you know, have to hit the hills.
Yep.
I don't know, but if you start going down this social media trap of all this negativity,
Mm-hmm.
then you have a real estate market that's uncertain with the interest rates. You have a job market that's uncertain with layoffs happening. Are we in a recession? Not a recession? What does that mean? How do we help people that when they're caught in that spiral? And the dues, like in real estate, the dues are due now.
Yeah.
It's $750.
Yep.
Okay. Well, maybe I didn't have that good a year. Maybe this real estate thing isn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that this is not an easy business, real estate, but it's not a complicated business
Right.
either. It's not rocket science. It's not aerospace engineering. We don't have to use calculus.
Yeah.
Or biology.
Yep.
But we have to work. And sometimes it's hard for people to work,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have to talk to people.
Yep.
That's weird for me.
Yeah, you and I don't have that issue holding us back, but many people do.
Yeah.
Talking to people is very fearful, right?
So what's some of the recommendations that we should be thinking about as a company, or if you're a person listening to this in your life, whether it's in real estate or your current job, or
Mm-hmm.
and all you're feeling right now is resistance and
Yeah.
fear.
So resistance. Let's talk about resistance for a minute, and momentum, because the opposite of resistance is openness. But in a business conversation, it's momentum, and momentum. We experience momentum when our thinking is in alignment with our desired outcome. So, for instance, the real estate agent might say, I have a goal of making 6 figures this year. If they want to experience momentum, their thinking they're going to have to intentionally create thinking that is in alignment with that. They're going to see themselves doing the outreach. They're going to see themselves networking. They're going to see themselves making the calls or doing the door knocks, whatever it is, right? They're going to see themselves actively in alignment with the desired outcome. Resistance, however, is thinking that is simply not in alignment with the outcome. I want to make 6 figures this year, or I want to sell 25 homes this year. The resistant thinking is showing the movie of them being rejected, not having enough time, not thinking they're smart enough. It's all this thinking that crops up, and it just like is roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and pretty soon it just takes them out of action. And then what they're experiencing is resistance, and then it's just downhill from there.
Yeah, the blame game.
Yep.
The fair and unfair game.
Yep, exactly. And then at that point, they're resorting back to that model of communication we talked: blaming, victimization, right? Arguing for their limitations, defending, giving reasons why.
You have talked and coached a lot about fair and unfair, and how that in that opportunity for fair and unfair to surface, there has to be a perpetrator and there has to be a victim, and 99.9% of the time, you're not the perpetrator. So
Correct.
Guess what that makes you?
The victim.
So when someone says, I often think this, when someone says to me, it's not fair that Johnny got the, best deal. I said, if we forced you, if it was a law, if there was a fair and unfair police that made you say these words, it's not fair, I'm a victim. If you had to say that at the same time, would you say it?
Exactly. That's, what? I love that. I'm going to start using that. That's not fair. I'm a victim.
Yeah. Hey. Can't hurt. You can't do that. That's not fair. I'm a victim, for God's sake.
Yeah, because no one wants to willingly be a victim.
No.
I mean, they want to say, I was a victim in that car accident, or I was a victim of that fraud, but no one wants to just be like all the time, like, I'm a victim to my spouse. I'm a victim to my parents. I'm a victim. No.
Yeah. And in shifts, that word shift, it's really like shifting a gear in a car.
Yeah.
Back in the old manual Mustang Camaro days. where you're popping that clutch and shifting. Well, it's not something that you just know. You have to learn how to shift. You'll have to learn how to drive with a clutch, right? And if you don't, if you've always driven an automatic and somebody gives you a 1978 Camaro and says, go to work.
Yeah.
It's tough, right? Until it's not.
Yep.
And so my concept around the shift in general, like in real estate, is the hardest part is to break or stop a habit that was successful and recognize that what got me here isn't what's going to get me to where I want to go.
Yeah.
And that is okay, because those people that recognize that the fastest have the greatest opportunity for success in the shift. So for example, what I think it's really boils down in real estate, let's say you spent 70% of your time showing properties in the last 5 years, last 7 years, last 10 years. Been a pretty good run. 3% interest rates. Prices were quite a bit less. Even 2 years ago, it was like 300 grand. Now it's 500 grand.
Yeah.
Average price. I went at you, right? Okay. Well, now we just have to shift. So you spent 30% of your time in the last 7 years lead generating and 70% of your time showing houses.
Yep.
Now you just got to invert that.
Yep.
Now you just got to spend 70% of your time lead generating and 30% of your time showing houses to get the desired outcome. That is a quantum difference in the industry. And I think sometimes people are like, well, now I don't like this industry because I don't like talking to people.
Yes.
I don't like. I like talking to people that are hungry for my services and that admire me and make me feel good. And I don't like rejection. So this whole idea of lead generating a whole bunch of people I don't know and talking to them scares the hell out of me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very scary. I can get rejected.
And so there's an example of how do we work on that?
Yeah. So number one, we have got to understand that we are not thinking these thoughts intentionally. They are simply showing up without our permission, consent, or approval. They just show up. Nobody picks up their coffee mug in the morning and says, boy, how can I feel insecure and fearful today? No one thinks that. Those feelings show up as a result of thoughts that are automatically generated. And so how do we deal with it? By becoming proactive. Like, how do I want to feel today? Oh, I want to feel confident. Oh, great. What thoughts would allow me to feel confident? Oh, I'm becoming really good at lead generating. Oh, I'm becoming better and better at talking to people. I know how to pick up a phone and dial it. I'm really good at that. I talk with my friends and family every day. I'm actually really good at being able to hold a conversation. I'm going to translate that to talking to strangers. I would just start looking for opportunities to talk to strangers in the supermarket. You don't have to pitch yourself yet, but just get in go out and talk to strangers. And then you're going to be able to grab that as evidence and say, wow, I did really good at talking to strangers. I'm actually becoming really good at, you know what? Talking to strangers is getting really easy for me. You just constantly looking for these opportunities to gather evidence and build yourself up. That's what we've done already. We're just going to bring intentionality to it in a way that serves us.
Yeah, one of the favorite little one-liners that I like a lot is simply done is better than perfect. I think so often we want to look good, look professional, not look stupid. Feeling stupid, that's a harsh thing. People do it all the time. I don't want to look stupid. Or I am stupid is even worse. When in reality, that's not true. That's just your brain playing a trick on yourself. Whatever you're thinking, you're becoming, and it's a habit. That's why you're uncomfortable. And so they're always waiting for all the stars to line up before they make that first call. Instead of just like done's better than perfect. Did you make 100 calls today? Did you talk to 100 people today? Call it Bold 100. Did you talk to 100 strangers today? What? What do you want me to do? Jump over the Grand Canyon on a Honda 50? Like, this is stupid. I'm not doing that. That'll crush me. But guess what? If you, like we always say, I tell people, hey, when you give a public speech for the first time, it is visceral. It's scary. Yeah,
you're dealing with chemicals in your body.
Yeah,
right.
And they're released instinctually. It's not like you say, hey, I can't wait. In my case, I can't wait for my head to turn as red as this crazy psychedelic wall and blotchy and my legs to shake. I remember when I was the president of the association, Fletcher, down here. It was like 2003. They elected me, and I was the first president from somewhere else. At the time, it was called the Wenatchee Association of Realtors, and I think I helped change the name to North Central Washington because I thought it was unfair. But I remember giving an acceptance speech, and like I was hearing this like while I was talking. And I was like, "What the heck is that?" It was my knee hitting the podium. My face beat red. I was hyperventilating.
That's so
I get
funny.
off, and they're like, "Good job." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm gonna go pass out for a minute.
Oh man, how times have changed, right?
Well, the 100th time you do something is easier than the first time.
Yeah, because you've gotten some confidence, right?
Even if it sucks, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's seeking out. And one of the things you've told me a long time ago was when you had to make some radical changes, you put yourself in some crazy, uncomfortable situations. And I think that's a really smart thing for people to do because you don't have to become Tony Robbins.
Right.
So maybe just put yourself in some uncomfortable situations on your terms.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because ultimately what we're talking about is rewiring the nervous system so that it responds differently. And that's done through exposures. So you want to find, so when we're talking about going out and talking to, strangers, that's an exposure. You're exposing yourself to an unfamiliar situation that's uncomfortable, but in a controlled method, right? You're choosing the person you want to talk to. You're not tied to, you're not having an hour conversation. So you're doing these little small exposures, and the mind is like paying attention and keeping track. Like, oh, we're getting good at this. Oh, we know how to do this, and that builds up the confidence, and it changes your nervous system, how it responds to this interaction. So it's all about the practice.
Let's piggyback on that. I call it the T-Rex mentality, where, evolution has wired us to be afraid.
Yeah.
As humans.
Mhm.
We're very delicate little machines,
We are.
right? Relative to a crocodile.
Yes.
We're kind of sensitive creatures. And so you don't want to stick your head out of the cave because, T-Rex is going to eat you.
Yeah.
Right. So the crab pot mentality, that's another one to Google, where basically the herd wants to keep you from becoming an outlier.
Yes.
So they want you to keep, and the problem with the herd, in my opinion, is it's the lowest common denominator of, what's the word, Fletcher? What's the lowest common denominator of who you could be?
Yeah.
Because we're all different, but your potential is your potential.
Yep.
And so it's not that your potential is better or worse than anybody else's, again, because one of the things we did when we started this conversation is we've failed.
Mm-hmm.
From a judgmental perspective. I've been bankrupt. I've been divorced. I've made bad decisions. I've done stupid things. I've done hurtful things. I've had to ask for forgiveness from other people and myself more than once, and I will again.
Me too.
So let's talk about your self-talk and how that works with that visceral chemical reaction. And until you explained it to me, I always heard the quotes or the cliches, thoughts are things.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on expands.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does that really mean?
Yeah. So what it actually means is, if there's one thing I know in life for certain, and I only claim to know this one thing, it is what you focus on, you feel. And I'll give you a great example of this. When we sit down to watch a movie, like I went to the Ruby Theater to watch a film last week. When you sit down there with your popcorn, you got your drink, the lights come up, you might be on the edge of your seat. Maybe it's this intense action scene. You're not even eating popcorn. You're just like spellbound. You're like, oh my God. If you were hooked up to a heart rate monitor, they would literally be able to see your heart rate is increasing. Why? Because where your focus is. Now, 10 minutes or 15 minutes later into the movie, you might be laughing your ass off, right? Something's hilarious. And now you got a different set of chemicals going through your body. And then 30 minutes into it, maybe one of the main characters dies tragically and you were really attached to them. And so you literally are crying in the movie theater. And then you're laughing your butt off again. And then, maybe there's a love scene and you're like feeling the heartstrings pulled. In that 2-hour movie, you've just had a roller coaster experience of emotions. And an emotion is simply a chemical reaction in the brain. So when I say what you focus on, you feel, I mean that extremely in the most literal sense. And now here's the kicker. none of what you were watching was real. It was light on a screen. But your brain cannot tell the difference between what's real and what's not real. Whatever you're focused on, it must create an emotional response that is in alignment with the story. And when we get that for ourselves, we'll understand that the story that I'm telling myself is of the utmost importance because it's literally affecting my nervous system, which affects my actions. So let's bring it back to real estate. The person who was terrified of picking up and making a warm call or a cold call, their focus is on, they're probably going to say no. I'm probably going to make a fool of myself. I'm probably going to look stupid. I'll probably embarrass myself. That's the story. The brain has no option at that chance. It must produce an emotional reaction that's in alignment with the story. And then they're going to feel this rush of fear, rush of adrenaline, cortisol, all that kind of stuff. And so that is going to influence the action that they take, which is hanging up the phone and straightening up the desk. There. I feel better now.
Staying horizontal, not going vertical.
You got it.
Going deep. Yeah.
Yep.
When people, if you really understand this, and this is why affirmations work, I think as well. Like if you write something on your mirror, and you anchor it to a habit you already have, like brushing your teeth.
Yep.
And then you say those words out loud. I mean, I think thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think thinking is one thing, but when you verbalize it outwardly,
yep,
your brain is then on full blown, I'm going to prove you right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's true or not true. So you might feel today like you're the ugliest person on planet Earth, or I'm so overweight, or I'm so short, or I'm too tall, or whatever, I'm too skinny. And if you that's your self-talk, let's say, for example, I feel like I'm not very smart. But if I put, I'm the smartest guy I know, or I'm the smartest guy I can be today, or I'm smart, just that simple. And I say that every day. Believe it or not, that works.
It works. And the reason it works, the biological reason it works is because you're activating your reticular activation system, your RAS. And that RAS, all of us have that RAS, it just took a command from you. You said, I'm focusing on being smart. The RAS then says, oh, we're going to look for things that support this statement. That's what the RAS does. It's kind of like a bouncer at a nightclub. It determines what data gets in and processed, and it determines what data gets paid attention to. It's like, okay, you're in, you're out, right? Oh, you're in support that I'm smart. Oh yeah, you come right in. Yeah. So that's why it works. Actually,
I just read I was listening to a podcast today on the way down here, and it was about genomes. There's evidence in trials now that your self-talk can change your genetic code. I don't know what it was called. Starts with an E. But this concept of your mind altering your physical state of being,
yes,
is they're showing some amazing research now that they didn't know not that long ago.
Well, what you're talking about is neuroplasticity. So for many, many years, we thought the brain was a fixed organ, like it wasn't malleable. But now we know it's called plastic. It's very malleable. So neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change itself and adapt to our environment. And so what you're talking about, another reason why this works is because the brain can change. So if we're feeding it empowering affirmations, because I know a lot of people say, oh, I've tried affirmations, it doesn't work. It's a practice. Yeah. We're combating years and years and years. We're combating hardwired programming. You can set up new neural pathways very quickly. However, they can also pair apart in just a few days if they're not nurtured and cultivated. How do you nurture and cultivate? By reinforcing it, by repetition. Repetition is the mother of skill, right? So it's that constant keeping it in front of you. On the mirror is a great one. And I use my mirror all the time for that. We have markers there. We write stuff on. The one that's on there right now is I welcome the obstacle because the obstacle is the path to my greater evolution. So I see that every day. And that way, when I see the challenge or the obstacle coming, now it prompts me to remember this. Oh yeah, this is part of the way I evolve.
Yeah, the way I look at it, it's so easy for people that are listening to us right now that are in a dark spot, or even if they're in a good spot, but they have dark days, to kind of, this is all mumbo jumbo, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. If you want to lose weight, or if you want bigger muscles, or if you want to run a marathon, guess what you got to do?
Mm-hmm.
If I tried to run a marathon right now, I'd make it to McDonald's across the street. I have some work to do, brother. I have some serious work to do, man. I got married, put on about 25 pounds. It's good. It's good living. Mindset is the same thing. The reality is you just have to agree that it's like a physical enhancement or getting in shape, cardio enhancement. Until you believe that, you're going to struggle.
Yes.
And then if you can come to terms with that concept, then you must apply the work, just like you wanted to run a marathon.
Yep.
I can go to McDonald's today. It's Burger King tomorrow. It's Dairy Queen and East Wenatchee the next day. And I can get there. Eventually, I'll stop eating the burgers and I'll go further because I'll get rid of a bad habit.
Yes.
Right? So it's the same thing. But if you don't work on it,
yeah.
Because society, often my theory is that it's driven by the herd.
Mm-hmm.
The herd does not want you to be that person.
Totally.
Especially when you have generational issues,
Mm-hmm.
meaning it's not how I made it. I dug ditches, man. Nothing wrong with digging ditches if that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But breaking away from habits that are ingrained over generations is a difficult task.
Yeah.
And you have to decide that you're going to be an outlier.
Yeah.
And you have to come to terms with this sad part. And the sad truth is sometimes the people that love you the most will pull you down the most.
Yeah.
To keep you from being hurt.
Yeah. And to keep them from being lonely.
And they believe it. Like,
Yes.
I don't want you to fail, Fletcher. So don't try to be a real estate broker. Go get a real job.
Yep.
I don't want you to fail.
Mm-hmm.
So go do that thing you don't like.
Yep.
For the next 30 years. And, you'll be happy doing it because I was happy doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to get that around me.
Right.
I'm the opposite of that guy.
Yes.
I want you to be like, I have some agents, man. We got like 80 agents now, and you're coaching a lot of them. There are some new agents that I'm just like, wow, these people are incredibly focused and enthusiastic, and they shouldn't be. But I love it, man. They're going to kick ass because here's the deal. We're not like doing something that's really that complicated.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of nuances, of course, and laws and stuff, but you have a big support team here. And I think if anybody's thinking about making changes, I know you've been very generous with our agents and spending a consult with them. I'm sure you do that with anybody if they called you. As we got to get to another appointment, but if we wrap this up, I just wanted you to be the first guest of this Real Estate Madness podcast, video podcast, and because you've touched me and my wife and my partners, Luke and Sydney, and now you're coaching so many people, and your business has gone so well for a reason that I'd strongly, strongly recommend people call you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I wanted to move this around to get this first one going with you, because I think this is the foundation of survival and flourishing in the post-pandemic uncertain world we live in.
Absolutely.
And I preach it. So
yeah. And we get the results that we're conditioned to get. So what you and I are talking about is we're conditioning the mind, brainwashing. We've all been brainwashed, but we didn't have a say in it. Now let's do it intentionally.
Well, one of the things you told me that I resonated with me, and maybe it will with others, is you're not your brain.
No, you're not.
Your brain's like your kidney.
Yep.
It's an organ.
You got it.
It just thinks it's you because it goes on autopilot without your intention.
Yes.
But once you understand that you, call it your soul, call it XYZ, I don't know what it is, call it your energy, you're in charge of your brain, even if your brain doesn't want to admit it.
Yes.
But the day that you forget to be intentional and live with purpose, your brain goes on autopilot.
You got it.
And it defaults to the lowest common denominator.
That's right. How can I be safe?
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks a million.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
All right.